Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where it's about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Legacies. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we have everything at the Salvatore School, because obviously Alaric is seeing Josie off on her first day of school. It's like, no, everything's good, everything's fine. You go, first day is going to be awesome. I know it's going to be a little hard and everything, but she's like, whoa, now you're making me nervous. No, it's going to be cool. It's going to be fine. It's going to be great. So, sending her off with smiles, even though the Salvatore School was in a bad situation, because then we kind of find out from the Lizzie and Hope situation, which I love. Lizzie's like, yeah, we kind of need to be there for each other, you know. It's like, you know, because the whole MG situation for her, and it's like, whoa. Hope's like, are you comparing Landon dying to MG, you not realizing MG's a good guy until it was too late? And she's like, it's not a competition, Hope. But also, she's not just dealing with that. She's also dealing with the whole, well, she doesn't have Josie situation, too. So, they're trying to make the best of it. Now they have to do, like, an orientation for, like, welcoming all the other new students in. But that takes a turn when it turns out, oh, there's not a whole bunch of students here. Hope didn't want to do it in the first place, but you had Lizzie being like, oh, you're not going to have to say anything. And it turns out being a handful of students, she's like, you're going to have to say something. And what's in our deal? So, I also love it. It's like, you know, where are the rest of the students? They'll be here in a minute. We are on a mid-semester break. I heard you went on your mid-semester break because the headmaster's daughter used dark magic and killed someone. I'm like, yikes. It's like, no, it's because of the monster truck. So it's like, okay, it's one thing after another. So they have to do all these orientation, trying to make it seem like the school's cool and everything, while Hope is trying to keep it together. That's always the thing. When you bury your pain, it always comes lashing out in some shape or form. Burying and bottling stuff up is never a good idea. But for Hope, you know, it's her way of dealing with things. It's a lot easier than kind of confronting things, because she kind of had to let Landon go last episode. She figures like, oh, Landon's dead. There's no getting him back no matter how hard I try. So she kind of had to let him go. But now everywhere she goes in the school, there's so many memories of him that it hurts. And she's trying to bottle it up, trying to pretend that she's okay, and her magic is like surging out, causing issues. It's like, oh, the students are back. Oh, it's just MG, Wade, Caleb, and Jed. It's like, where are the other students? Yeah, none of them are coming back. Apparently, Alaric got some notes from the parents. It's like, yeah, me gathering up the students for a battle royale with Malivore kind of was like the final straw. It's like, when you consider everything at this school, it's like, yeah, this school was supposed to be a place for the supernatural to be safe, and you find out, like, it's danger on a regular basis. It's like, yeah, me gathering up your kids to fight, yeah, that probably not the best decision. But, I mean, hey, my kids were there, too. Not like that makes that any better. Not like Alaric said that, and that wouldn't be a defense, but I'm just saying, like, technically his kids were there. I wouldn't make your kids do anything I wouldn't put my kids through. And to some people, it's probably like, that's not reassuring. That's even more effed up that you as a parent would do that. I'm sure he'd probably get a lot of flack for that as well. But yeah. So, but Lizzie asked the great question of, how long have you had that letter? And he's like, yeah, that's not important. So it must mean he's had it for a little while, and he's just been in denial. Like, no, everything will work out. Luckily, later on, he's like, yeah, we got 30 students to join, and that basically gives us, with that total, it gives us the minimum we need to keep the school open. But then Lizzie was like, yeah, but you have to convince 2 of the other 3 students that decided to stay, because, hey, this list includes Raphael and Landon, so you're 2 short. So that was interesting. I also love Jed was like doing some push-ups. He's like, oh, 998, 90, like that. Oh, I didn't know you guys were there. It's like, oh, you're the alpha? This is all that's left of your pack, too, which it's sadder, too. And it's like, yeah. He's like, I'm like a alpha to wolf ratio or something like that. It's like, it doesn't work like you were. Not even how you describe that situation, because whatever, Jed, whatever. So I love that. And what I thought was interesting too is, you know, obviously Hope was telling Caleb, it's like, no, I can have it under control. It's going under control. And Caleb doesn't really fight her on it. Like, I think because he's kind of doing what MG said of like, hey, I'm going to try. Which I love that MG's on his very like, nah, nope. It's like, you got any plans, MG? And MG was like, I thought he was going to say, like, oh, I got nothing. Caleb ends up being the one that says that. But MG's like, no, I'm going to put myself first. And I love Caleb's like, that's not my fault. That just happening right there. That's totally not my fault. So they have to kind of jump on top of this, you know, situation. It's kind of up to them to figure things out. But I think he's taking a little bit of MG's, which is interesting because, like, MG told Caleb kind of not to give up on Landon, but I guess it's like maybe he hasn't 100%, and he sees how much Hope's going through it, so he probably doesn't want to tell her he's still holding out hope a little bit, because MG kind of convinced him not to give up. We'll see kind of where things kind of go on that front, but obviously less and less people want to stick around, and I love it's kind of like a divide and conquer situation, and I love like Lizzie being like, oh yeah, I'll go with the vampire, and Alaric's like, no, I'll go with him. And then Caleb is like, oh, I'll go with the witch, because I think we were vibing a little bit, and it's like, oh, I get stuck with God, I forgot. She was making like some pun on like Hermione from Harry Potter, and they were like, "What?" It's like, "Oh, she's like Hermione from Harry Potter, but like more stuck up or whatever." And Caleb was like, "Oh yeah, nice, yeah." I also love like the whole thing with Wade and Jed. I love that. Wade's like, oh, you want to play D&D? And then Jed's like, oh yeah, I want to say sorry about the whole, and Wade's like sleeping with his girlfriend thing. It's like, yeah. So, I love him being like, okay, Wade, I might be in the comics, but I do have some form of dignity. I don't like playing D&D, which is like, that's so hurtful. It's like he's drawing the line in nerddom. It's like, dude, I am in the comics, but come on. D&D? Ugh, it's the lowest form of nerddom or something like I'm sure that's for him. It's just like, but I guess I feel like you could interpret it that way, but truth be told, jokingly, I think you could interpret it that way. But I think the other thing is like, I'm a nerdy dude, but I'm not that nerdy. Because come on, D&D's some nerdy shit. I don't mean that in a bad way. Obviously, as you can tell, my entire channel is built around nerdy stuff. But it's like, D&D's some really, really nerdy stuff. So it's like, if you're into D&D, that's some deep cut nerdom, like even though like D&D has become like super popular, but regardless, I think that's just what MG's perspective on it was like. I haven't reached that level of nerdy. I'm nerdy, but I'm not that nerdy yet, But also, it's like, no, Jed, I'm not going to accept your apology. And it's like, oh man, this is so new and so refreshing, and he feels so good about it. So. It turns out the little girl with braces, her name's Gabby. Apparently she went to the same school as Penelope. It was like, wow, we have not heard that name in a hot minute. Because Alyssa Chang ended up being kind of the new Penelope, but way, way worse, actually. But it's like, we ain't heard Penelope's name in a hot minute. And it's like, wow. Oh, yeah, she told me about the school, and about Josie. And it was like, oh, boy. And obviously, Lizzie's still struggling with the whole... Josie's situation of like, for her, she's worried that Josie's going to go off and kind of forget all about them and leave us forever. So it's not just Hope that's kind of burying things. Lizzie as well. Like, all of this is kind of meant to be a distraction. Kind of didn't work on that. I love that Caleb is trying to serenade Cleo, and she's like, yeah, she wants kind of to be told the truth, but yeah, no one would until she talked with Hope, because because it's like there's something powerful in you, and it's like, because she threw some paint and it splattered on the canvas, and it's like, well, what did you see here? For her, it's, what was it? Her fear, I think, and anger. That basically, she sees her friends being in trouble and she can't help, because everywhere she goes, it reminds her of Landon, and she can't control, like, that she can't control her powers in her situation. And so, obviously, Cleo asked her, is this, why be anywhere else? It's like, this is my home, like, And despite everything, obviously, it is that for her, a home. And I think even more so probably after losing all that she's lost. I mean, obviously, like, her family's kind of currently, they're all living their own lives. And, I mean, the ones that are still around are kind of scattered, So, but it's like they will always be family. But it's like, kind of like it was time for Hope to kind of find her own home too, But also it's like, is this place safe? Sometimes, but obviously when it comes down to it, it's a place to be safe, to be yourself. And for Cleo, it was like, you are the first person to be completely honest with me, so I want to sign up, which is like, I think at the end of it all, like, this was good for both Hope, but also she's got a good friend. I'm wondering, are we going to dive? Like, obviously, we're going through the trouble of introducing these characters. I'm wondering, like, it's like, because he was like, oh, do you have any family? She's like, no, it's just me. I'm like, is there more to that or not? The whole Cleo thing. Are we going to find out Cleo's actually someone that we're not quite aware of? I'm curious about that. So, I think that's going to be interesting. I think there's going to be some backstory to who Cleo is. Turns out to be backstory about who the vampire dude is, because apparently he's like, oh yeah, like, he's like, yeah, my family came across like a vampire hunter, like we sworn vengeance against him. He was like, and the Lark's like, and the kid keeps going, and he's like, and he tries to attack him, and the Lark knocks him out. I love that the dude wakes up chained up, and the Lark's like, okay, I know the whole sworn vengeance and blood oath thing, but I think this is why the Salvatore school is actually good for you. And the dude's like, just stake me. Oh God, just stake me already. I'm like, he tried to kill you, but you're so desperate. You're like, but come on, you can come to this school. You can come to this school. It's, which for him, it's like, I get it. Like, he hated a certain vampire for a long time, but it's like, oh, kind of ended up becoming my best friend. It's like, that is ironic how that whole situation ends up playing out. Once again, like, Caroline's mom and Damon became best friends too, so it's like, come on. Which, Bonnie and Damon became besties, I mean, being trapped in a prison will do that to you when you kind of have no one else. They grew extremely close because of that. So it's just like, which is, I think is interesting. I feel like, I was about to say, I think Damon kind of ended up on the other side of that compared to Stefan. I don't know. If you probably totaled it up, I'm sure Stefan still comes out on top of more people liking him, but it's like, Damon changed a lot of hearts over the course of the Vampire Diaries show, when you think about it, like, how, like, he shifted a lot of people's narratives and view on him, regardless. But obviously, that kid ends up leaving. Like, obviously, Alart puts him back on a plane or whatever. Because it's like, you aren't fit to be a headmaster because you've killed supernaturals and stuff like that. And it's like, yeah. I was wondering, I'm sure that rubbed Alart the wrong way. But obviously, he's going a long way of helping a lot of supernaturals. Not just his students, but obviously a lot of the supernaturals he's known before taking over the Salvatore school. Plus, his kids are supernatural as well, but I'm sure that statement probably still rings a little true of like, yeah, you're not going to want to go to this school. But also, I love the reason why Gabby's decided to stay, because it turns out her and Wade have had an online D&D game the entire time, and it's like, oh my god, we didn't even realize it. Now we met in real life for the first time. It's like, yeah, I want to sign up here. And it's like, okay, so that works out. Hey, we have all the students we need. That's cool. Side note, I'm thinking about that. I'm trying to... No... I was about to say, like, the actress who plays Cleo, I feel like I've seen her in something recently, too. She looks so familiar now that I'm thinking about it. I'm wondering if I'm mistaking her for another actress. I might be mistaking her for another actress. I'm not sure. I have to look into that. But, regardless, obviously, Lizzie came with ice cream and everything. I thought that was kind of sweet, but she saw that Hope was doing well, so it's like, oh, you don't need that ice cream. We're not going to have to, like, sulk and, be miserable together. It's like, you're doing good, chatting it up with Cleo, having someone to talk to about things like that. And she goes to MG, and then she's wondering if, like, MG will let her in. It's like, oh, can we just hang? He's like, yeah, this is the hardest thing I have to do, because he's already getting rid of stuff with Alyssa. It's like, of Alyssa stuff, and it's like, no, I don't want to, okay, so this is going to be hard, but no. Because for him, it's a whole situation of, I don't want to continue, like, this is our pattern, like, you turn to me when you have no one else to turn to. To be fair, she was dealing with a little bit of heartache that you are aware of, or might be aware of, that's what I'm curious about. I think I'm not really, like I said, I'm not 100% sure if he realizes how she feels about him or not. I think he does, but I don't know. But for him, it's just like, she was kind of avoiding him because she has her feelings about you, but it is a thing of, now it's kind of too late in certain regard. Plus, he's also just getting over a relationship. Not the best time to jump into a relationship, because it'd just be a rebound situation. Need you both to be in a situation where you both heal, and then kind of just naturally find your way to each other. Because I think ultimately they will get together. But for him, like, drawing the line, because he's like, we'll get caught up in this pattern of you turning to me and needing a shoulder to lean on. And it's like, for him, it's like, if you continue down this route, all you're going to do is be filling that void, putting your happiness in someone else's hand. And, your happiness has to kind of be of your own making, which I totally get. I support that, because that's a lesson I had to learn as, like, it took a relationship when I was a teenager to kind of, and I still struggle with that, but there was a relationship where I kind of, once again, I made someone kind of my everything, and it's like, it's filling that, like, void, but it's like, when that person wasn't around, like, that void kind of came back. It's kind of a similar thing, so it's like, I totally resonate with that. But then, even as an adult, I still kind of struggle with that a little bit, of like, yeah, my happiness has to come from within me. I can't rely on, like, yeah, people can be part of your happiness, but you can't use them to to feel that emptiness in you. Like, you kind of have to find a way to fill it yourself, and just your happiness, people you create with other people can just add to it, but it can't be the everything. It can't be your everything to fill that void, They can't just be your everything in general, So, like I said, I kind of resonate with that. And she's like, you're 100% right, MG. Like, if I had actually gone in there, we probably would have made a mistake and like had sex or something. He was almost like, wait, what? And he's just like, yeah. I was like, oh, poor MG. Lizzie didn't think about it, but like, that's not what he wanted to hear in that moment. It's like, yeah, this new me. Especially because Lizzie was like, man, so many things are changing. New students, old students not coming back. It's like, there's so much changing, and she thought MG would be the same, but it's like, oh, MG's changing. But then it's like, oh. But I think this will be Lizzie's way of, obviously that's something she's struggling with, trying to get rid of some of her bad habits. Hell, even when it's like she was hanging out with Gabby, her dad was like, okay, I love you for who you are and everything, but I'm going to need you to kind of pull back basically who you are to a little extent when around her. And Liz just almost kind of got like a, fine, whatever, I'll do it type of situation. So that was an interesting development on the Salvatore school front. Then on the Josie side of things, obviously her first day at Mystic Falls High was awesome. She ran into Dorian because it's like, oh, not only is he a teacher here, he's also the new principal, because Alaric kind of hooked him up with the job. It's like, well, to be fair, Alaric was the principal there last season, so he would be kind of more aware of it than anyone else. What's also interesting, too, because I didn't talk about it, but the Salvatore school also doesn't have any teachers right now, but it's like, let's worry about the student stuff first, then we'll figure out about the teachers. Which, to be fair, we never really got to meet many of the teachers anyway. The only teacher we ever really met was, like, Emma, wasn't it? So, regardless, I think that happens a lot in shows anyway. You never really get to meet a lot of the teachers. I think at Mystic Falls High, I think Lark was like the only teacher we ever really got to know. I think. I could be mistaken if memory serves correctly. But, yeah, Emma was like, yeah, I kind of have to go to a monster-free zone. But it's also like, it's Mystic Falls High. Like, I guess it's like all the supernatural stuff is going to stay at Salvatore School. But it's also like, Mystic Falls is obviously the hotbed for supernatural, obviously, in many different ways on, not just the Salvatore School, but also just Mystic Falls in general. It's a beacon for the supernatural to a certain extent. So it also, but I guess it's like all supernaturals are going to go to the school, but also it's like, it's going to bleed over because Mystic Falls can't help itself. I mean, its foundation is built off the supernatural, so that's why I'm like, I don't expect there to ever just be a monster free, because obviously, like, there's going to be probably collateral, like, in the Mystic Falls situation. Maybe not. I don't know. Well, regardless. So that's just interesting in its own right. But also, like, she's like, thanks for decorating my locker. And Dorian's like, that wasn't me. It ended up being Finch being like, yo. So they're hitting it all. Like, Josie's like, oh my God, my day's been amazing. But then she got a letter. She looked at a letter that she'd gotten from Lizzie and saying, like, don't worry about us. Focus on you. And it made her feel bad because it's like, I was having such a great day, and not once did I think about my sister. And for her, she was feeling guilty, which later on she's talking to Ethan, and Ethan, he's like, he understands, like, the situation of kind of not being with your sibling who is, growing up as your best friend. You've always kind of did everything together for you two to be kind of separated. It's like, yeah, it's a hard situation, but at the very least, it will kind of get easier, so... It's kind of, he says that, Maya would kick his butt, because for her, what's most important for her is him being happy, and obviously Lizzie would want the same thing. Yeah, she's got her own issues about it and struggles just because you're her sister. I mean, even more so because you're twins and everything, but it's like, at the end of the day, like, she does want her happiness, and obviously Finch kind of reinforces that, because Finch ends up talking about some interesting stuff where she's like, My family dynamic's a little crazy, and I ended up, like, having to emancipate myself at, like, 14, so she's been on her own for a couple years. But for her, she's like, I felt that initial guilt of being the only one out of my family that kind of got away from whatever that situation necessarily was. I'm curious about finding out, because at first, when we first met Finch, I'm like, are we going to find out you're something supernatural? Probably not. Probably just going to be a regular human, which is going to be interesting, like I said, because eventually those worlds are going to collide. Like, Josie, whether it's circumstances that most likely will bring her to, like, have to unlock her magic, and she'll have to leave the school because, like, and all these new friends she's making, because it's like being a witch, like, obviously being supernatural around humans doesn't always work. Once again, look at the Vampire Diaries for like, there's usually a lot of collateral damage. Obviously, the school's suffering from said collateral damage, and that's a school full of supernaturals when it comes to that. But it's like a school of humans. Like, there's always going to be people who get caught up in it in some shape or form. So we'll see how things kind of play out on that front. But I'm interested to see where Josie's story continues to take her when it comes to the whole Mystic Falls High, and also like, you know, Finch and Ethan and what their stories end up being over the course of all of this as well. So there's that. And then let's finally take note of the situation inside of Malivore with Landon, which is actually where we started at the beginning of the episode, interestingly enough. Him walking through the door, I was like, where's this going to take him? An ice cream parlor. And at first, all those people are there, and I'm like, are these actually the monsters? Is this in like in their human forms or something like that? That's what I was wondering. And then like the necromancer was there. Okay, it's like, so some of them are like fake human people, and then others are supernaturals that basically has to serve them. I even love Landon being like, why is it an ice cream shop? I mean, it's like, the necromancer's like, it's a long story. It's like, actually not that long of a story. You needed a job as a human, and this is where you had to go, and you hated it. So this is, because basically, because I was thinking, like, is this what it looks like for, like, all the, like, is this kind of like the hub for, like, all the monsters? That's what I was wondering. But it's like, no, this is his particular hell, which I guess, like, every supernatural has their own hell, which is interesting, because there was obviously, the whole situation in season 8 was about a being who created his own version of hell, kind of a psychic hell. So it's just interesting to know that Malivore's doing the same thing to kind of torture people, in particular the necromancers, just because what the necromancers try to do, take control of them and everything. So it might just be like everyone else might be in their own little pocket area, because obviously none of them are supposed to run each other. They're invisible cell walls, so maybe they're all, I mean, actually kind of reminds me of Hell from Preacher. I don't know if it's like that in the graphic novel, but in the comic book it was like, obviously your hell is kind of like of your own making. Like, it's almost like they made it like it's a projector type of situation. So I was wondering if it's something kind of similar in the case of this type of situation. So like, are they all just locked in their invisible cells in their own versions of hell? I'm sure it's probably a similar thing. I just thought that was interesting. But the necromancer is chained up and everything, and he's like, obviously Malivore has made it, like, gave him the key and everything, because the whole point is to have your escape within reach in front of you, but you can't get access to it type of situation. So I thought that was interesting. And Landon's the one that made him figure it out, because it's like the way to get the chains off, because he ended up getting the Sphinx to read it, was like, yeah, he has to do the one thing he doesn't want to do. And it's like, all right, let's list off the things you wouldn't do to get out. And it's like, fall in love, yes. Betray that loved one, yes. Like, of course I murdered the person I fell for, or whatever. So there's nothing he wouldn't do. And then it turns out, yeah, he wants you to humiliate yourself in front of customers. So sing the song, and he sings Happy You Know It, clap your hands. And he does it and gets free. And then he proceeds to knock Landon out and handcuff him, because it's like, yeah, if there's going to be a way out, there's only one of us getting out of here. Very similar situation to the whole Hope and Clark situation. Like, that was a very similar circumstance. So it's like, if you're getting out of here, I'm getting out of here, because I know Hope is going to save you. Because it's like, he's like, I don't have any way out of here. He's like, oh, of course, no one expects you to get out of here, Landon. It's like, no, Hope is going to save you like she always does, and I'm going to get saved in the process type of situation. Which you can tell it immediately makes Landon feel pathetic, because he has a little bit of an inferiority complex when it comes to that. I think that's the first time I've ever been able to clearly say that word, inferiority. See, I struggle to say that word. Oh, that word is my nemesis. Oh, I hate it so much. I hate that I can't say that word without feeling like I'm saying it weird. And I wasn't thinking about it, so I said it perfectly the first time. I'm gonna shut up now. But I thought that was, it's always been something that bugged him. Like, he always felt like he needed to be saved and protected. So for him, being able to be a phoenix, being able to fly and also not die, made him feel a little bit better, made him feel more useful. But without it, going back to feeling like, oh, I need to be protected type of thing. So that's issues in its own right. So this is just a reminder of that. Like, oh yeah, I always have to have, like, my girlfriend always has to save me. I'm not able to protect her. Like, it's not always, like, for him, he doesn't feel like it's always on the other shoe. So they're waiting for Hope to save them and everything, and it's like, all right, well, let me see the key. And then, like, he's like, oh, I know what this key means. Yeah, they build all this stuff, including freezers. And it's like, once again, your escape is right there in front of you without you realizing. And I love them like tripping and pulling on each other. And then the next thing we see them smashing through the glass window of the place. And obviously for the necromancer, he gets the upper hand and he handcuffs Landon. And he's like, yeah, that's your problem. You'll never do whatever it takes to escape. And in that moment, Landon kind of snaps a little bit, starts choking him with the chain, and boom, boom, started beating the crap out of him. I was like, wow. And then the chains came off because that's something Landon would never do. Like, do whatever it takes to get out. And I thought the moment that happened, I was like, this is going to be interesting because when the time comes, he might not be the same person when he comes out of it because obviously time works differently in that place. So you lose a sense of time because the only reason why, like, to punish him more, basically that ice cream store has an actual work hour. It's like 8 to 5, and it's like it's bad because the necromancer spends the entire night knowing like, oh, I'm gonna have to get up and repeat this cycle over and over again. But Landon manages to escape, and it's kind of what the necromancer said. Yeah, like if we escaped, we just end up in the prison world where Malivore could probably try and just consume you all over again. But we see that is where Landon landed. Because Malivore spits you, because the Malivore pit to their world is gone now. So because I guess in that moment, all of Malivore, like when they used the pit the last time, like as the hybrid, her coming through destroyed the pit, and so there's no connection to Malivore in that world anymore. So Landon's there, still trapped in the prison world, surrounded with all the monsters that were still running loose last time we chat. Because Lizzie hasn't gone there in a while because like we don't know if she's still checking in from time to time. Because it might be a thing of they're all kind of giving up on land, which is interesting because there was that thing. Basically, it was the thing that was supposed to like grant wishes or whatever, but Alaric fished it out. So either he hasn't 100% given up on trying to save Landon, or because last time we saw it lit up, so maybe that's why. Maybe it did help in the end, because the door Landon saw, maybe it opened a pathway to the necromancer, which is like getting him a step closer to getting back to his friends and hope. Maybe not. I don't know. Maybe it did something else that we're just not aware of yet. But I don't know whether Alaric was trying to use it for his own, or whether he was trying to help with the whole Landon thing without telling anyone that's what he's still up to. Maybe it's still kind of a side project for both him and Caleb. Like I said, neither one wanting to give hope, unnecessary hope, because they don't want to get her hopes up just to kind of end up ultimately dashing him. So we'll see. But obviously, he's leading to that note, to whom it may concern, I'm a human, but, I'm not going to give up. And he puts on, the necklace he had got from Hope, like, as they were, like, as he was, quote-unquote, dying or getting sucked back into Malivore. But, stuck in this prison world, surrounded by monsters, he's like, Hope's usually the one that comes up with the plans, but I'm still not giving up. Who knows who else or whatever else is in it. Well, aside from the monsters, we don't know if there's anyone else in the prison world. Like I said, I don't know if Lizzie's going to astral project in there anymore, because that was just that was for Landon, but also, that was, her way of kind of dealing with the whole MG thing as well. But I'm curious that she still pop in from time to time to see if there's anything there. So maybe she'll come across Landon's note, or maybe she might bump into Landon himself. Who knows? I'm really interested to ultimately see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.